Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. This is part 2 of the 9-stage employee lifecycle. Quick recap, in case you're joining fresh. Last time we covered the first 5 stages: attraction, recruitment, onboarding, engagement and development. The through line was simple. Everything in that half is about getting someone in the door and getting them good at the job. If you haven't seen it, pause here and watch part 1 first. This half won't land properly without it. Because today we're doing the 4 stages most organizations neglect: performance, retention, exit, and alumni. What happens after somebody leaves, which almost nobody plans for at all. Here's why that matters. The back half of this model is where your money is. Replacing a person who leaves costs a multiple of their salary, every single time. Keeping them costs a conversation you probably should have had 6 months earlier. Stage 6. Performance management. The stage everyone dreads, usually because it's done in the worst possible way, once a year, in a room, with a form. Think about what an annual-only review actually is. It's 12 months of unspoken feedback delivered in a single meeting. That's not management, that's an ambush. And by then it's far too late to fix anything. What does good look like? Continuous check-ins, so that when the formal review comes round, it contains precisely 0 surprises. Everything in it has already been said. Expectations written down and specific, because clarity of expectations is literally the first item in Gallup's Q12 engagement survey. It's item number 1 for a reason. Everything else is built on top of it. And separate your conversations. Coaching and compensation should not happen in the same meeting, because the moment money enters the room, nobody hears the developmental feedback. Here's the practical bit. Great work this quarter is worthless. It's pleasant and it's useless. The way you rewrote the onboarding doc cut our support tickets by a third. Do more of that. That's specific, it's evidenced, and it makes the behavior repeatable. Feedback that can't be acted on isn't feedback. It's just noise with a nice tone. Stage 7. Learning and development. And this is consistently one of the strongest retention levers you have, because for a lot of people, especially early and mid-career, the question isn't, am I paid enough? It's, am I going anywhere? What does good look like? Learning tied to real work, not a course catalog that nobody opens. Visible career paths. People should be able to see what the next step is and what it takes to get there. And here's a big one. Managers rewarded for exporting talent internally. Because the alternative is hoarding, and hoarding is the quiet killer in this stage. A manager blocks an internal move to protect their own team, and the person doesn't stay put. They leave the company altogether. You didn't save the employee. You just made sure a competitor got them. Picture the analyst who wants to move into product management. She asks, and she's told, not yet, maybe next year, with no plan attached. Give her 12 months and she'll be doing product management somewhere else. Same analyst, given a defined path and a stretch project she can start on Monday? She usually stays. Quick honesty note on that 70-20-10 model you'll see everywhere: 70% on the job, 20% from others, 10% formal training. It's a useful design prompt. It is not a validated scientific ratio, and it gets quoted as though it is. Use it to think with, not to prove things with. Stage 8. Retention and recognition. And I want to reframe this stage completely, because most companies do retention backwards. Here's the backwards version. Someone resigns, you run an exit interview, you find out what was wrong, and you write it in a report. Congratulations, you've just bought extremely expensive information about a person you can no longer keep. Here's the forwards version, the stay interview. You sit down with people who currently work for you and you ask 2 questions. What keeps you here? And what would make you consider leaving? That's it. And the answers are almost always fixable: a schedule conflict, a growth path, one specific ongoing frustration, but only while the person is still in the building. Remember the data from earlier? The Work Institute found around 75% of departures were preventable, and Gallup found 52% of leavers said their organization could have done something. That's the entire case for stay interviews in 2 numbers. One caution though, do not treat all turnover as bad. Some turnover is genuinely healthy. It brings in fresh thinking and it opens up promotions for the people below. The number you should actually be watching is regretted attrition, the people you'd be genuinely sorry to lose. A company with 15% turnover made up entirely of poor fits is in far better shape than one at 8% that's losing its best engineers. Stage 9. Offboarding and alumni. This is the stage almost everybody skips, and I genuinely think it's the most underrated one in the model. Here's why. Someone might work for you for 5 years. But they'll spend potentially 50 years as a member of the public who has an opinion about you. That's the actual maths. So what does a well-run exit look like? It's dignified. Knowledge gets captured before the last day, not after. The handover document, the passwords, here's what I was in the middle of. The exit interview is done by someone the person will actually be honest with, which is very often not their manager. And then the relationship continues. Professional services firms have understood this for decades. Law firms, consultancies, accountancy practices run proper alumni networks with newsletters, events and directories. Not out of sentimentality. Because a former employee becomes a client, or refers one, or comes back 3 years later with skills you didn't pay to develop. That's the boomerang hire, and they typically ramp up far faster than an external hire because they already know how the place works. And this is where the loop closes. Remember I said this is a circle, not a line? How someone leaves you directly feeds stage 1, your employer brand. Every bitter exit is a review. Every good exit is a recruiter. The last day isn't the end of the life cycle. It's the beginning of the next one. Let's make this concrete with 2 examples that are actually documented, not invented for a slide. First, Google. I mentioned this earlier but it's worth sitting with. The Sunday night before a new person started, the hiring manager got an email with 5 things on it. Role discussion, peer buddy, help them build a social network, monthly check-ins for 6 months, encourage questions. That's it. Managers who acted on it got new hires to full effectiveness about 25% faster. This is from Laszlo Bock's book Work Rules, so it's an internal company result rather than a peer-reviewed study, but the cost of copying it is 1 email, so the risk-reward is absurd. Second, Zappos. After the training period, they offered new hires cash, reported at somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 over the years, to quit on the spot. No hard feelings. It sounds insane until you see what it's doing. It's filtering out anyone who's staying purely for the paycheck, at the cheapest possible moment to lose them. And the people who turn it down have just publicly committed to being there. Both of these are stage 3 and 4 interventions. Both are cheap. Neither requires new software. Right, 3 myths. Myth 1. The life cycle is basically hiring plus exit. No, stages 4 through 8 are where people spend about 95% of their time with you. The bookends get all the attention and all the budget, but the book is in the middle. Myth 2. Engagement is about perks and culture events. We covered this, but it's worth repeating because it's the most expensive myth on this list. Companies spend real money on visible things, the snacks, the off-site, the merch, while the actual drivers are all manager behaviors that cost nothing. Clear expectations, the right tools, being recognized, someone caring, room to grow. Myth 3. Offboarding doesn't matter because they're leaving anyway. This one costs the most over time. Your exit process is a marketing event whether you manage it or not. Every person who leaves writes a review, sometimes on Glassdoor, always at a dinner table. Now this next bit is the part of the video I'd most like you to remember, and it's not about HR at all. It's about how numbers travel. Here are 3 statistics you will see in almost every article about this topic. 1. Strong onboarding improves retention by 82%. That's real, it's from a Brandon Hall Group study. Published in 2015. It's more than 10 years old, and it's almost never cited with a date, which makes it sound like this year's research. 2. 20% of turnover happens in the first 45 days. This gets credited to SHRM constantly. As far as I can trace, it doesn't originate from SHRM. Be careful with that one. 3. Cost per hire is $4,700. That was SHRM's older figure. Their 2025 benchmarking report puts non-executive cost per hire at $5,475, and executive at nearly $36,000. So if you're building a business case for your leadership team, use the current number, because the fastest way to lose a room of executives is to have one of them fact-check your slide and win. 6 ways this goes wrong in the real world, and I'd genuinely like you to score yourself as I go. 1. Onboarding as an event. 1 day of paperwork, then silence until the probation review. 2. HR owning what managers do. HR can build the system, write the templates, run the training. Only the manager can have the weekly conversation. If your lifecycle program lives entirely inside the HR team, it isn't running. 3. Measuring only turnover. A single annual percentage tells you something broke. It never tells you where, or when. 4. Surveying without acting. We covered it, it's still the most common one I see. 5. Copying another company's stages. A 200-person agency does not need a 20,000-person bank's process. Match the model to your size or you'll build a bureaucracy nobody follows. And 6. Ignoring the manager layer. Managers drive around 70% of engagement variance, and their own engagement is falling faster than anyone else's. Which means the people you're relying on to fix all of this are, right now, the least equipped to do it. If you got more than 2 of those, comment, guilty, below. I'm genuinely curious how common this is. 6 ways this goes wrong in the real world, and I'd genuinely like you to score yourself as I go. 1. Onboarding as an event. 1 day of paperwork, then silence until the probation review. 2. HR owning what managers do. HR can build the system, write the templates, run the training. Only the manager can have the weekly conversation. If your lifecycle program lives entirely inside the HR team, it isn't running. 3. Measuring only turnover. A single annual percentage tells you something broke. It never tells you where, or when. 4. Surveying without acting. We covered it, it's still the most common one I see. 5. Copying another company's stages. A 200-person agency does not need a 20,000-person bank's process. Match the model to your size or you'll build a bureaucracy nobody follows. And 6. Ignoring the manager layer. Managers drive around 70% of engagement variance, and their own engagement is falling faster than anyone else's. Which means the people you're relying on to fix all of this are, right now, the least equipped to do it. If you got more than 2 of those, comment, guilty, below. I'm genuinely curious how common this is. Here's the part your leadership team will actually care about. How do you know any of this is working? I've grouped the 9 stages into 3 blocks. Attract and hire, stages 1 and 2. Offer acceptance rate, what share of your hires came from referrals, time to fill, quality of hire at 6 months, and candidate experience, including the people you rejected. Settle and perform, stages 3 to 6, 90-day new hire retention, time to first meaningful contribution, the I know what's expected of me score, your engagement index, and one that nobody tracks but everybody should, 1-to-1 consistency. What percentage of scheduled 1-to-1s actually happened? That single number predicts an enormous amount. Grow and leave well, stages 7 to 9. Internal fill rate, percentage of people with a documented growth plan, regretted attrition, exit interview participation, and boomerang and alumni referrals. Here's the rule that ties it together. If a stage has no metric and no named owner, it is not being managed. It's being hoped for, and hope is not a system. This is great, but I have a day job. Fair. So here's a realistic first 90 days. Days 1 to 30, map and measure. Take the 9 stages and mark your organization green, amber or red on each one. Be honest, an optimistic map is worse than no map. Pull the data you already have sitting in your HR system. And talk to your 5 newest people and your 5 longest serving people, because they see completely different companies. Days 31 to 60, fix the worst stage. 1 stage, not 9. For most organizations it's stage 3, onboarding, or stage 8, retention. Give it 1 named owner and 1 metric, and ship a small visible change that people can actually feel. Days 61 to 90, prove it and expand. Remeasure. Share the result openly, including the bits that didn't work, because that's what makes people believe the bits that did. Then use that credibility to fund the next stage. That's how this becomes permanent instead of a slide deck that gets presented once and quietly dies in a shared drive. Let's bring it home. 5 things. 1. It's a loop, not a line. Stage 9 feeds directly back into stage 1, how people leave shapes who applies next. 2. Onboarding and integration are separate stages, and pulling them apart is where most of the quick wins live. 3. Engagement is a manager outcome, not a perks budget. Around 70% of the variance sits with them. 4. Ask people why they stay while they still work for you. Exit interviews arrive too late to be useful, they're an autopsy, not a health check. And 5. A stage with no metric and no named owner isn't managed, it's hoped for. Here's the honest summary of this whole video. You cannot fix what you cannot see. This model isn't a rulebook you have to obey, it's a pair of glasses. Put them on, look at your own organization, and the broken stage will be obvious within about 10 minutes. And that's the full model. 9 stages, both halves. Now let me show you the part that changes everything. This isn't a line, it's a loop. How your people leave feeds directly into how the next ones arrive. The person who exits badly on Friday is the review a candidate reads on Monday. The alumnus you stayed in touch with is the referral you don't have to pay for. Stage 9 pours straight back into Stage 1, which means the model has no beginning and no end, only a weakest link. And your employee experience is only ever as strong as that link. So don't try to fix 9 stages. You won't. Pick one, the weakest one, give it 90 days and a named owner, and let the other 8 wait. Tell me which one you picked, comment the number, 1 to 9. And if this gave you language for something you already suspected was broken, share it with the person who can actually change it.